Crime, an ever-present aspect of human societies, adapting and reflecting the social, economical, and cultural dynamics of each era. From basic survival needs in the ancient times to the high-tech cyber and transnational crimes of today's digital age, crime has evolved alongside human civilization. With ever-changing phase, crime management has become complex for nations, often involving a variety of agencies that utilize advanced law enforcement techniques, international collaboration, social interventions, technology, and community engagement for crime prevention and response. In this episode, we will delve into one such premier agency that is at the helm of protecting our nation, FBI. A leading U.S. counterterrorism, counterintelligence, and criminal investigative organization, the Federal Bureau of Investigation, that has jurisdiction over violations of over 200 categories of federal crimes. At the core of it is an elite force of highly skilled individuals dedicated to upholding the law, preserving national security, and making a real difference in the world. FBI Special Agents. Today, we will explore the vital role of FBI and its special agents in ensuring our nation's safety, and learn how you can make a meaningful impact on society by pursuing a career in the FBI. This is Career Calling, and I'm your host, Pratibha Pandit. My guest today is a seasoned FBI Special Agent, Greg Concepcion. Special Agent Concepcion is one of the Behavioral Analysis Unit coordinators assigned to FBI's San Francisco field office. In a career spanning 26 years, he has worked on criminal, counterintelligence, and cyber divisions. His previous assignments included supervisory special agent positions within the New York field office and FBI headquarters counterintelligence division. He is a certified special weapons and tactics operator and a former member of Washington Field Office Evidence Response Team. Mr. Concepcion earned a Bachelor of Science in Criminal Justice and a Bachelor of Arts in Psychology from the California State University of Long Beach and attended Masters in Forensic Psychology program at John Jay College of Criminal Justice in New York. In this episode, Special Agent Concepcion takes us on his inspiring journey as a first-generation Latino who has forged a fulfilling path as an FBI Special Agent, and shares invaluable insights and information for those interested in pursuing a career within FBI. Hi, Greg. Welcome to Career Calling.
Thank you. Good morning, and a pleasure to be with you here today.
Yeah, protecting the nation and citizens of the nation is such a noble profession. Thank you so much for all you do. As a person who is not associated with any of the law enforcement, only information source being what is out there in the pop culture, what we see on TVs and movies. There are so many different agencies to protect the law and order and safety and security of the country. There are state police, marshals, CIA, Secret Service, FBI. There are so many things. The lines are blurred when you see from outside who comes into picture when. So my first question to you would be, please help me understand, what is the role of FBI and what are the situations when FBI comes into picture?
Yeah, that's a fair question, just because I think of all the different federal agencies out there in the popular media and dramatizations, TV, movie, books. I think it's fair to say that the FBI is very much one of the federal agencies that gets a lot of saturation in the media, good or bad, but definitely whether it's the show that I kind of grew up on, which was the X-Files, or it's any of the news shows, Criminal Minds or Silence of the Lambs, or a new show they have, which I think is the classic 2007 or 2009, which is interesting. But for the FBI, we had our beginnings a long time ago. In 1908 is when we were established, back in the Department of Treasury days. Most people know us as when Director J. Edgar Hoover took over And the FBI kind of got its familiarity with fighting bank robbers and the old days with the Tommy guns, yes, and responding to shootings with bank robbers back in the day. And we've obviously expanded since then. But yes, the FBI is, we like to say, and I haven't heard so much, is the premier law enforcement agency in the world. Because what separates the FBI from some of our other federal agencies is the breadth of investigative priorities that we cover, from international terrorism to cyber investigations, counterintelligence, what we call national security investigations, to financial investigations, white collar investigations, public corruption. We do criminal violent crime programs, working transnational crime is the new kind of popular term that's used out there, but that encompasses any crime that goes across the world, across the country. We have venues, we have what we call legal attaches, which is offices that we have overseas, that we have through the virtue of the State Department in that host country, allowing us to have a legal attache office, which has a senior executive that is there for the purposes of advancing relationships between that local law enforcement agency, whatever country that may be, in order to provide training. A lot of crime today is international, so we need the help of our foreign partners, our host countries, because we have no authority within their country to investigate. So if we need to collect evidence, we have to go through that country in order to get the proper assistance and approval, whether that's asking for international bank records or telephone records or to do an interview. We ask permission to do that only with that host country agency. So there's a myriad of different things that the FBI is involved with that just grew from back in the old days of fighting bank robbery or white collar crime to now dealing with cyber crime, which spans across the globe and affects everybody, and everyone is a potential victim. So that's kind of where the kind of thing I could talk all day, but those are kind of a broad for your audience to kind of understand.
The involvement of FBI, does it start based on the type of the crime that is being investigated or the jurisdiction? When does FBI jump into action?
Sure. So being the FBI, we're a federal agency charged to investigate federal violations of law. So we have 56 field offices within the United States. So within those 56 field offices, we have an FBI office that has a number of squads that deal with all those programs that I just mentioned. The FBI has a priority of the programs that we are charged to investigate. So we have a framework as to whenever the special agent in charge of that field office and a crime gets reported to us, we have a number of different squads, but we need to address them in a systematic fashion. So if we're looking, obviously, the charge that we have in the FBI is to protect the American citizens and uphold the Constitution. That is our main mission and goal. And within that, that is what we seek to do, is not only to respond to crime, but also we want to prevent crime from happening. I think a good example of that is that ever since 9/11 and the unfortunate incidents that happened, it was identified through the 9/11 Commission that agencies were not sharing information to the best degree possible. And everything changed in terms of how the FBI was to operate under the stewardship of Director Mueller and the other agencies within the U.S. government, CIA, NSA, everyone else, identifying that we needed to break the barriers of information sharing that we had in place. And they were there for a good reason. But it just identified that we needed to figure out a better way to share information, not only between federal agencies, but to local law enforcement. So after the 9/11 Commission, Director Mueller restructured the FBI and changed the priorities of what we would want to investigate. At the time, it was and still is the counterterrorism would be number one, and then counterintelligence, national security type investigations number two. And nowadays, cybersecurity is the kind of third category, but also white collar crime, public corruption are also very high up there on the list, and then goes down to our other programs like our criminal division, which unbeknownst to a lot of maybe viewers is, although our priorities are terrorism, cybersecurity, and national security investigations, that the criminal division is a huge part of the FBI. We have a lot of agents dedicated to fighting all the various type of crime that happens in the United States and globally.
I will go into more details of the special agent role, but before that, I wanted to hear about your journey. Did you always have your eyes set on FBI? What attracted you, and do you have a moment that attracted you to this field?
Sure. Do you have about another 8 hours? So I've been in the FBI coming in June. I won't say the day, but 26 years in the FBI, which I think in today's market is unheard of, more of a dinosaur, because our young folks these days are very much jumping from job to job, collecting experience and not staying anywhere too long. My father retired from the airline industry after 30 years. And I was like, wow, that's a long time. And I think by the time I retire, I'll probably be hitting years myself. But to answer your question, I did not start off as one of these individuals who grew up as a young child saying, I want to be an FBI agent. I didn't have any family in law enforcement, some family in military, but didn't really have a strong influence in my life. And I grew up a first generation Latino, or Latinx, if you want to use that term. I had a mother from Argentina, a father from Cuba. They both immigrated here and had various types of experiences. But again, law enforcement was not one of those. And I remember my mom telling me, you're going to go to college because you're going to be the first one to go. And you can either go to college or you can go to the military. And naively at the time, I was scared, didn't know much about the military. I said, I want to go to college. In hindsight, I would like to have enlisted in the military because it's a noble profession. And we have a lot of people in the FBI that are former military, and we work very closely with our military on different things. But for me, that's not what I wanted. So I decided, yes, I'm going to go to college. And at the time I think as a kid, I think I wanted to be a dentist because apparently they made a lot of money. So I wanted to be a dentist. And then as I gravitated towards college, I had an interest in psychology. So I studied as a major, my first major in psychology. I had an interest in the behavioral aspect and learning more about the mind and therapy. And I kind of gravitated based on a professor who was a forensic psychologist. He was Cuban as well. So I kind of gravitated towards him and found that forensic psychology was very good, fascinating topic that studied the abnormal psychology aspects of why people do things, more of the criminal aspect, and then also blended the law. So I said, this is interesting. I want to pursue this. I would like to be a clinician. And I decided that in order to get that kind of criminal justice background, that I wanted to also double major in criminal justice. So I was a double major in both. My first class in criminal 101. So I was studied in California. Actually, Cal State Long Beach was my alumni. I was UC Cal State Long Beach at the time, but I think they now just go by Long Beach State, home of the pyramid. But so anyways, it was a retired California Highway Patrol officer, and he was great. He would bring in guest speakers, and one of those guest speakers happened to be from the FBI. And so this was roughly, I'm going to date myself. So this was the mid 90s. And the FBI came in to do a presentation. And part of that presentation was on, at the time, called Behavioral Science Unit. So it was known back then. Silence of the Lambs, Jodie Foster had come out with Hannibal Lecter and all that good stuff. So it was, profiling was the kind of new thing out there. And that movie was very popular. So we got a presentation about the Behavioral Science Unit. Being a psychology major, wanting to be a forensic psychologist, I said, well, great. This is what I want to do. This is so exciting. So that was kind of my first introduction to the FBI. And basically from there, I decided that, hey, I want to learn more about the FBI. And this is very pre-internet. So I had to go to our campus library and pull out books about the FBI and the application process and read what that was, and identified what that process was, that you needed to be 23 before you could apply, have a bachelor's degree at the time, and have about 3 years full-time work experience. It was required back then. That was my first introduction to the FBI.
So you are kind of doing now the same thing by inspiring others, right? Like giving out that information. That's amazing. But I do want to ask you from that time, if you remember seeing it from the outside, were there any surprises when you really got into FBI as a special agent, like the reality of it versus what you thought it would be?
Yeah. So yeah, I still can remember. My memory's not too far gone yet. And we don't all have photographic memories on the FBI, but it's funny that 25, almost 26 years, and I can remember every kind of little detail from applying. I started in the Los Angeles field office. So what they call it, a clerk back then, but basically it's an entry level position. And then I moved on to our New York field office doing surveillance work as a non-agent. We call that like our mobile surveillance teams related to working on stuff for national security hub investigations. And yeah, so when I came in to answer your questions or anything that kind of surprised me was just coming in as a 22-year-old, still in college and applying. I got into our Los Angeles field office as an entry-level employee at GS5 pay scale back then in our LA field offices, which is our second largest field office in the FBI. What differentiates our Washington field office, New York field office, and LA office, which I've served in all of those, is they're run by what's called an assistant director in charge. In San Francisco, we have a special agent in charge, and then we have assistant special agent charges that are underneath those programs I mentioned, counterterrorism, cyber, white collar, criminal. But because the LA field office, New York, and the Washington field office are so large, have to cover so much territory, that the head of that office is called an assistant director in charge. So when I entered the LA field office, this is right when the internet was starting to take off. And I entered, my first job was answering our switchboard, running the radio dispatch. So in LA, it was the bank robbery capital of the world. Late 90s, we still responded to bank robberies. If your viewers can remember Point Break, there's two of those movies now. One was the reboot, but the one that always everyone is dear to my heart is when Keanu Reeves played that young FBI agent working in LA and trying to solve bank robberies. And so that was kind of the impression that I had. And then going into our building, the thing that struck me the most coming into it was just the scale and size of the organization and the professionalism and just the broad range of diversity within the office, both men and women working all these different type of programs. And it was just a large scale thing. So for me, it was getting a peek behind the window of what's work. But fast forward 26 years, the FBI has changed quite significantly since that time.
Yeah, I was looking up on the website. FBI employs more than 35,000 people. Mostly we see special agents when you hear about FBI. What are the different types of roles? What are the different categories of opportunities within FBI?
Sure. I think most people think FBI, they think of the special agent. That's kind of what's front and center. We're the ones that are out investigating cases. We're responding to crime. We're doing outreach. We may be on the media, depending on what it is. So the special agent position itself has definitely grown and diversified since I became an FBI agent back in 2001. And I guess what's maybe more significant back then is that I am Hispanic, Latino. And even back then, the demographic is not just white male military accountants or lawyer, very diversified, eclectic group of individuals who decide to dedicate themselves to the profession of law enforcement and become a special agent, foregoing high lucrative salaries. I myself am a little unique because I became an agent within the organization. So I grew up in the FBI since I was 22 years old. I'm getting my degree prior to becoming a special agent, building my full-time work experience within the experiences I had within the organization. But many of our agents who apply are coming from a vast array of different professions, whether that's prior law enforcement with another agency or a local police department. It could be from another federal agency. We definitely get in terms of other professions outside of law enforcement or military. We'll have, again, it's a diversified group. It could be a doctor. It could be an attorney who's in private practice. It could be a teacher. It could be a psychologist, therapist. It could be a professional sports athlete, a firefighter, someone in your capacity. We really seek all these different backgrounds and experiences because it helps us better understand not only the people that we are investigating, but also helping us to connect more with public and people who are a victim of a crime, who have knowledge about a crime. And a big emphasis for the FBI has been making sure that the agents that we hire reflect the country in terms of both gender, racial background, and identity. Because what we really need to have is when someone comes knocking on your door, they want to see someone that looks like you.
Coming from a technology industry, all we know is a 9 to 6 desk job. Tell me what's the life of a special agent is, whatever you can give out. What does it look like? Is it a lot of field work versus desk work?
Yeah, I mean, every agent has a different kind of work schedule. It's definitely not a 9 to 5 job in any means. And really for someone like myself, that's what I find appealing. The realities of being employed by the FBI, there's a lot of work that has to be done in the office, just based on the nature of the material and investigations that we do that are obviously law enforcement sensitive and must be protected, but also things that go into the realm of classified information that we deal with in our international terrorism, counterintelligence, cybersecurity programs. That just can't be done outside of the office. But I will speak in general terms, and then I will kind of talk about my day to day, and hopefully not a way to scare anyone from wanting to work with us. But the thing that's great about being an FBIS is you're not working 9 to 5. It's not your typical job. It's nothing that you will probably do anywhere else, although there are many professions, probably your job before you came here, where you're working early in the morning, you're answering your emails, you're skipping lunches, and then you're continuing to work on presentations, read whatever it is you need to read, and then continuing to answer emails up until midnight. So that aspect isn't necessarily different from what the FBI is. So it's similar in that aspect, but you'd kind of never know some days what may happen. If you're working on a squad that's more reactive, then you kind of have to be ready to respond if something happens on your investigation, or there's some kind of terrorism event or some other incident that requires an immediate response, whether you're part of our evidence response team and you're responding to a unfortunate, like a targeted mass violence kind of situation or a bombing of some sort, then those folks have to deploy immediately and then get to the scene to secure and start the collection evidence process. Or if you have some kind of violent crime incident where a FBI agent who has the collateral duty as a SWAT operator will have to deploy with their team and get to the location in order to neutralize whatever threat that may be, just like our local law enforcement partners. But to give you a kind of a more good picture of something what my day is. So in my current role, I'm what's called the threat management coordinator under the behavioral analysis unit. I'm a behavioral analysis unit coordinator here in the San Francisco field office. So I am a representation of our behavioral analysis unit back in FBI headquarters in the Quantico kind of area where they sit. And those are the folks who are specialized and trained to do behavioral threat assessment as it relates to identifying people who might be wanting to commit a targeted mass violent event, which we commonly refer to as an active shooter type situation. They are trained to do that threat assessment kind of training as to identifying people of concern who are trending to commit a mass violence event for whatever reason that may be, and then working with law enforcement, not only our FBI office, but the other law enforcement agencies who are seeking the help of the FBI to see whether or not someone is on a particular pathway to violence, how imminent that level may be, and then coming up with the appropriate threat mitigation management strategies on how to deter that one from that path. A common thing that some people don't know is in the threat assessment space when it comes to a targeted mass violence event is the law enforcement tools that we have at our disposal aren't always the appropriate tool to use, or that may not be possible at the time because the person where we have identified that he or she has some concerning behaviors, there may not be an arrestable offense. However, based on the training we get and the research that's been done by the FBI, Secret Service, and others in this space, we know that we can reach out to our mental health practitioners, whether that's a psychiatrist, psychologist, or school counselors, et cetera. And what we do is we create the ad hoc team and we bring them into our behavioral threat assessment team and say, hey, this person has, whether it's a juvenile or adult, they have some very concerning behaviors that we have seen in other cases. And they haven't risen to the level where we're going to arrest them or we're going to do some legal kind of action against them. But we want to bring in our mental health folks or whoever that may be to come up with a strategy so that we can figure out the appropriate remedy, not only to protect the community, but that person who's in crisis, to make sure that they're getting the help they need. Our goal is to make sure that we kind of call it like bumpers in the road, right? We want to make sure that everyone's traveling on that same path. When they start to veer, they're hitting the bumpers, and we want, okay, what do we need to do to get that person back? That's a holistic approach to it. So going back a long kind of way to get to this. So when I wake up in the morning, it could be 5 a.m. I'm checking my emails to see who has contacted me overnight. If I didn't hear it, my phone is on at night. So if I get a call or an email, I'll respond to that, especially in the work that I do now. So I'll start early in the morning, checking to see my email. I do have the ability to connect on unclassified systems to see emails from other law enforcement agencies or within my organization. And I'll check to see, is there anything happening on the cases that I'm consulting on or helping out with? Or am I getting requests for training? Or is an administrator from a school district wanting to connect with me about how we can help strengthen their school or get some threat assessment training for them, or law enforcement? So I'll do that for a couple hours in the morning and then make my way into the office around 8 o'clock or so. If there's nothing else I'm headed to, so then I can log into our systems, check in with the agents on the squad. Typically my calendar is booked. So I'm either heading to a training that I'm going to give to law enforcement, or meeting with a school district, or meeting with private industry to talk about how we can collaborate on something, or if there's workplace violence training I can give them, make my way back into the office and see whether or not I have to then go out with an agent to conduct an interview of some person of concern to collect that data, to identify what's going on in that case. And all the while I'm getting calls from other agencies who are asking for assistance. And that kind of progresses throughout the day. And eventually making my way back home. I have 3 young children with my beautiful wife here in San Francisco. So checking in, I may have to deviate and go to a parent-teacher conference, or the school may have asked me about some suspicious letter they got about fraud. So I'm taking my time to help out with that. And then also I might be doing a presentation at a school on cyberbullying, or just doing general outreach. So it really is all over the place, which I love because I thrive on being busy. I don't want to be idle, but in my idle time, then I'm either reaching out to other practitioners in the field, or attending a conference and just spreading the word about how we can better connect to protect our community from, at least for my role, in prevention of violence through targeted mass violence offenders. Kind of a little glimpse. And then I get to talk to someone like you, who has an audience, and talk to people who are in this job role.
Yeah,
It's
that's
never a
amazing.
dull
So you
moment.
have to be always up for something new or some new challenge every day, basically.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, some things that separate the FBI is we're not first responders per se, although we do respond to critical mass violent incidents and other things. But with the FBI, because we work larger investigations that are wide scale and that have a transnational nexus to it, as opposed to our local law enforcement, that they're more considered first responders. If there's a crime, someone calls 911, and let's just say our San Francisco Police Department has to respond to the crime in action. So we do not investigate those local crimes. We investigate federal crimes and work with the U.S. attorney who prosecutes those crimes. So unfortunately, because the amount of crime that happens, there are certain thresholds in terms of what the U.S. attorney's office has the bandwidth to investigate. We're looking to prosecute the most impactful cases.
Mhm. Given the nature of the job, what in your mind, other than the education itself, what kind of personalities, what kind of traits are required to be successful in this job, to enjoy this field?
Yeah. So I think every agent will probably admit to being what we call like a type A personality, someone that's not afraid to talk to the public, kind of take charge. That's for the majority of us. I think we have that, being a little bit extrovert. However, there are plenty of very good successful agents who are what we call type B personalities, more introverted and have more analytical thinking. I think I'm somewhere between a type A and a type B, where I'm happy to talk to people, but maybe at the end of the day, I might feel a little drained as opposed to some folks who are energized by talking. But yeah, basically you kind of, to be an investigator of any sort, you have to have a curiosity, right? You have to be curious. You have to have someone an analytical mind. You can't be afraid to talking to people, because we need to connect with the public, not just to do appropriate interviews, but in order to make that person feel assured that the FBI is taking their complaint seriously, that we're connecting with you, building rapport, so you feel comfortable talking to us, and you want to continue to engage with us. And that's just from one small aspect of it. For going out to conduct an interview, that we need information, but we do a lot of outreach. We have to build relationships, not just with the community, but with our local partners, our state partners, our different city officials, our state officials. So as an FBI agent, you need to be able to effectively communicate with whoever you're talking to. Generally, we want FBI agents to be friendly. We want you to smile. We want you to have a life outside of the FBI. So we shouldn't, as an FBI agent, think even though we have special in the title, that doesn't mean we're more special than anybody else. We just have a very clear mission, and our role is to protect the United States and uphold the Constitution. And we do that through the investigations that we have. So we are open and welcome to anybody who wants to join the FBI. We obviously have strict hiring requirements. And in order to be an FBI employee of any sort, not just an agent, you have to hold top secret security clearance. And that requires that you have not done certain things in your life, and that you have integrity, that you don't have a criminal record, and that you live a straight arrow life.
I looked on the website that the minimum education requirement is an undergraduate degree. And you spoke about you welcome all different fields. Or the majors themselves, do they have any impact on what kind of investigative role you would get, or what kind of role you can get into?
Sure, absolutely. Great question. So I'll speak to the agent category. We definitely, like any other employee in the technology industry, are looking for STEM kind of applicants for hard sciences, math, computer science background. Traditionally, back in the day, a long time ago, I was hiring attorneys and accountants, which we still get plenty of attorneys and accountants and foreign military. But again, as I mentioned, you need to have agents who have a broad range of experience. So we're definitely looking for people with a cybersecurity background. Would be great these days. Billion-dollar industry, and it's not going anywhere until the cyber crime. So we need to attract those candidates who have not just cybersecurity. It could be a network administrator, but someone who has experience in telecommunication, cyber industry is definitely a plus for us these days, because that cybersecurity and cybercrime just hits every aspect of any investigation you have, whether you're investigating gangs are utilizing different kind of ways to communicate and hide their communications, to individuals that are engaged in any kind of predatory acts towards children and utilizing technology and the internet to share that information, whether that's through encrypted apps, etc., or utilizing cryptocurrency. We need people who can or adapt in those fields to be able to investigate these crimes. But we also want, again, people who have a background in education, mental health. Attorneys are always something that we don't like to have as well, just because of the background and training of an attorney through the law and application and being able to communicate and speak, litigate cases. Obviously, that's something that is useful for an FBI agent. But I have new agents that I work with now on the squad that I'm on who have backgrounds, again, one that was a teacher, one that was a psychologist at the Veterans Administration. It's just all kinds of different roles that we want to see. But at the bare core, 4-year degree in an accredited college is the basic educational requirement. Being 23 years old, you have to be at least 23. And those are the two main categories, is age and then 4-year college degree. And then if you just have a basic undergrad degree, then I believe the current requirements is to have at least 2 years of full-time work experience. And that would be work experience post college, not just any job working full-time anywhere. It has to be something related to your degree. And then those individuals that have an advanced degree, their master's, PhD, et cetera, then it's 1 year of full-time work experience. And then at that point, you can apply to the FBI. And then we have a phase 1 and a phase 2 test. One is a written test. And the second one is a panel interview. And then a writing exercise to determine whether or not, based on what our criteria is on what we feel an FBI agent should be. Those 2 tests are based on that. And if you pass those 2 tests, then you also have to do physical fitness, because that is a big part of the special agent job. You have to both be mentally fit, but then also physically fit to be able to go out and arrest bad guys and just be healthy. And there's also firearms training that we will teach you at the academy, but you have to train and pass the firearms qualifications course as well, as long as defensive tactics, because you can't just always pull out your gun. There are situations where a lot of situations, that's the last resort. We have a deadly force policy we use in those situations, but we want to be able to de-escalate a situation. And then if you have to try and arrest someone, then we obviously will do that through our physical prowess, which we call our non-kind of lethal means. Personal weapons is what we call elbows and fists and whatnot. So they'll train you that at the academy as well. You don't have to come prepared to do any of that. We have great trainers at the academy who will train you how to defend yourself, both using a firearm and through defensive tactics, teach you how to drive a vehicle in defensive means in a tactical manner. And then we'll train you how to become an FBI agent investigating crimes, and then also learn about the Constitution and all of the legal requirements that we use when we work our cases.
For the written tests, that is part of the application process. I think it's called essay test. Are there any training that one can get? What do they prepare? Is it more general information about U.S. Constitution or the laws? What is the nature of it? And what resources are available?
No, I mean, I really can't speak too much on that, because some of that we don't share publicly. We don't want, it's not that it's secret, but that's just our policy and how we do our recruitment and tests for applicants is they need to be able to write well, because in the FBI, a large part of our job is just not going out there and arresting bad guys. There's some interesting books out there by Ron Kessler and others about the FBI, and I forget the titles of them, but there's tons of books out there. But one of them that I read, interestingly enough, it was a book written by a Russian intelligence officer, probably for the KGB at the time, although they've now changed from SFB to SVR, about the life of an intelligence officer and how it's actually 25% in the field doing the super secret work out there and trying to recruit people to betray, whether it's the United States to get secrets. And then the other 85% is back in the office writing it all up. and documenting everything. And it's kind of no different. And maybe you could attest to this too, but really all the fun stuff is probably 25%. The rest is actually having to document everything that you do, write your reports, investigative reports, your interviews, request authorities and approvals to do something, getting a judge to give you a search warrant or an arrest warrant, working with the U.S. Attorney's Office to draft up a complaint. All of that is very intensive. And also writing an operations plan if you're going to have an arrest scenario. We very much effectively document what we're going to do, how we're going to do it within the FBI policy and guidelines and through our domestic intelligence guidelines or our Attorney General guidelines. Very structured. We're not doing anything on the fly here. Everything is properly planned and prepared for before we take any kind of action. And in order to build a case that we have to present to a U.S. Attorney's Office that's going to go to a jury, those reports have to be no errors, no grammatical errors, and everything has to be tightly documented. In the FBI, we say, if you didn't document it, it didn't happen. It has to be thoroughly documented in everything that we do. So that requires a lot of time in the office. One thing I would recommend is taking a typing class so that you can type as fastly as you can, because that will help you tremendously in your job, is being able to type well. But yeah, so I mean, the FBI job, and when it comes to in the office, you kind of have to be an academic in terms you have to be able to collect the data, research data, type up your data, and then present it as well. So those are the skills. It's a reason why we require 4-year degrees, that you're going to be doing a lot of writing and reading, not just talking to people or going out there chasing bad guys or making the arrest. That's an important part, but it's overshadowed by what goes on behind the scenes.
Does the entry point change based on whether you have a undergrad or a master's or a PhD, or everybody gets into like agent?
Yeah, everyone is hired at a GS-10 level. That's the federal pay scale level for the U.S. government. Regardless if you were a former CIA officer or a assistant district attorney or a doctor, everyone comes in to the academy making the same amount of money, starting at the same level. And that's why it's just tremendous that we have these individuals from these different backgrounds who decide that they want to pursue this life of an FBI agent because they want to protect the public and be a civil servant. And give up some of that lucrative financial pay that they had to take on this important mission. So when we're recruiting individuals or people are interested to talk to us, and while you're not going to be rich coming to work for the FBI, you will have a very comfortable life, and competitively in terms of the other federal agencies, we do as best as we can to match salaries and whatnot. But for us, what stands out to someone who's seeking to come to work for the FBI as opposed to work for a high kind of salary employee in, let's say, Silicon Valley, where we're located here in San Francisco, is the mission. It always comes down to the mission of the FBI, again, is to protect the American public, uphold the Constitution, and protect our community from foreign adversaries to criminal actors to whatever threat may be coming around the corner, that we work globally. The mission of the FBI is what brings people to the table here and why they forego those high-end salaries, or they decide that maybe I'm doing great, I'm making a lot of money in a company, but what am I really doing with my life, maybe outside of making a lot of money for a company? And not to say these companies are altruistic, they do a lot of good for the community and the world, but some people say, I want to make a difference in another way. How could I use my skills? And it's always the mission that keeps an FBI agent here working. Even sometimes you may think, oh my God, I'm stressed out, or did I make the right choice? And yes, it's the mission that brings you back. There's no other job than working for law enforcement, FBI specifically, where every day you're making an impact. And for the FBI, it's just not locally in your city. It's at the state level, at the country level, and globally. You could be flying internationally multiple times a month or a year because your case, again, takes you overseas. You work with all of our different friendly country, we call them Five Eyes partners, which US, UK, Canada, Australia, and New Zealand in the national security realm. But we routinely work with them to protect the globe really against foreign adversaries that are seeking to do us harm. So that's terrorism, cybersecurity, and you're just not going to find that anywhere else. Even when you retire, people are staying until the very end because they don't want to give up that mission. And then the great thing is you can apply that working for another company and bring that skill set to an organization, whether to protect their employees from the inside or to effectively understand how to work with law enforcement. So we have a lot of our retired folks that go into those roles instead of just retiring on a beach somewhere, which you can do, or pension. And a retirement program can make you comfortable unless you have young kids like me. So you have to keep working.
Finally, Greg, in a lot of other industries, if I want to get a taste of the job, I can go and do internships, right? Technology industry, that's very common. What are the options if somebody wants to get a taste of FBI job? Is there an option like are there internship programs or how do they familiarize themselves?
Sure. So we have a variety of different ways. The main one is we have the FBI Internship Program. So that is for students who are still in a university setting, an undergrad or seeking a master's and PhD. You can apply for an internship program. That happens kind of year round, but the main kind of hiring is in the summer years. So students have to go to class. So they have summer break. They can apply for the internship program, which is a very competitive program, which basically when you apply, you will get paid by the FBI, not the GS5 level C salary there, but you will get afforded a clearance, top secret clearance. Because in order to work for the FBI, you have to have a security clearance. So you'll be hired as a intern and you'll be placed within one of the FBI's different programs. They'll apply to the program because they have to get a security clearance. It could take up to a year to get that background investigation done, which also does include a polygraph examination. And so you have to be able to pass a polygraph examination. But once you get your security clearance done, and there's an interview process as well prior to starting that security apparatus or background investigation, then you will be placed within the field office. And I believe it's for 90 days or so. I could be wrong with that, but it's clear on FBI.gov or FBIjobs.gov. And then you'll get to work. Depending on what your background is, we'll place you in an appropriate squad or division, and you'll get to utilize your education and then see what it's like working with the FBI hand in hand. And every experience is different depending on what your background is. So that's our internship program. We also do it in the winter as well. And then a candidate chooses to want to continue to work with the FBI even after the internship kind of officially is over. In order to maintain your clearance, you're allowed to do a certain amount of hours at that field office while you're continuing to be a student, and then apply for a job with us if you like, or we sometimes will recruit folks who we think would make a good fit to see if they wanted to apply for an actual position. When I was a non-agent operational support role, which I did in the Los Angeles field office and in our New York field office, I was still attending college full time. I was working full time and going to college full time, which was a rough period. Basically working full time during the day and then full time at night, and then weekend work and summer classes and winter classes. But you kind of have to do that if you want to succeed. So outside of that, we have different programs for like college students in terms of going after those folks and identifying people from particular educational backgrounds and providing them opportunities for kind of college placement type roles. And again, that's all on our website. But then we also have what's called our Citizens Academy, which we offer through our FBI field offices, which is a program through our InfraGuard program, which is basically a program for our 13 critical sectors within our different technology sectors, employment sectors. And the Citizens Academy will have, it's kind of like a Academy 101 for professional employees within those different critical sectors and to provide like 1 day a week for about 8 weeks. Don't hold me to that, where they will get a taste of what it is that we do in the FBI. We'll have agents in different programs present to them and have other kind of activities to better kind of give them understanding of what the FBI does besides what they see in the news or see on our website. Our cyber division has what's called a CISO Academy for our chief information security officers in an organization, which they'll bring them back to FBI Academy in Quantico. And then they'll get a number of briefings from our cybersecurity. Elvis Chan is our assistant special agent in charge here for our cyber division. He's been working cyber for all of his career, which I think is now almost close to mine in terms of 20 years or so. And he is one of our experts when it comes to cybersecurity and working these cases. He's worked with every country, whether that's on basic criminal programs, cybersecurity criminal groups, or nation state actors who are looking to interfere with our elections, are testifying on Congress, or doing whatever it is at that level to advance the FBI cyber program. So he's heavily involved in that program. And outside of that, we're happy. We go out and present. We have what's called the Private Sector Engagement Squad here in San Francisco. Every field office has one, but ours is here in San Francisco. And what makes our Private Sector Engagement Squad unique is that we have Silicon Valley in our backyard. So we very much engage with Silicon Valley, regardless of just doing general outreach presentations or talking about how we can best streamline the legal process. Tech companies receive tons of grand jury subpoenas and all kinds of different legal process for information that's necessary to investigate certain crimes, et cetera, or they may be victims of a crime. As you'll see, all you have to do is go on the internet, and some company's a victim of ransomware or some kind of data breach. And the FBI is the only federal agency that has the investigative arm to go and investigate those cases that relates to ransomware data breaches. So we have to have a very tight relationship with our tech companies here in the Bay Area, because we are kind of the conduit, and we build those relationships with them so that they have one point of contact with another federal agency or law enforcement seeking to get information from them. We can leverage those relationships.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Greg. This has been very informative. I really enjoyed learning about FBI more closely than what I can read on the internet. Thank you so much for your time and all the information that you shared today.
It was such a pleasure to talk to you, and I thank you for the opportunity to reach out to your podcast viewers. And if anyone ever wants to learn more about the FBI, please come visit our website, FBI.gov or FBI Jobs, and pick up the phone, call us. We're here if you ever need anything. Office, we always speak to everyone that comes to our doors. We don't turn anyone away. For example, when it comes to cybercrime, we have our website called ic3.gov, and that's our Internet Crime Complaint Center, which is the C3 part of that. So, and with anytime anyone is a victim of any kind of cyber crime, cyber incident, any kind of crime that happens on a computer, public can go to ic3.gov and they could submit a report to us. We also have our tips line, www.tips.fbi.gov, which is also something you can go online and report any kind of report to the FBI, and that gets sent to our National Threat Operations section, and it has what's called the National Threat Operations Center. And you have a 24-hour operation there of analysts who are taking that information, identifying what it is, doing analytical work, and then seeing where that victim lives or that subject may live. And then that gets filtered to the appropriate field office. And then again, we have our Private Sector Engagement Squad. So if you are a company or a school or anyone and you want to have an FBI agent come speak to you or do a presentation, reach out to our FBI San Francisco office, and our social media team is there and available and can provide presenters, whether that's talking to a school, talking to a Fortune 500 company. As I mentioned, I was at RSA conference. I spoke at American Psychiatric Association. I'm scheduled to speak at the Professional Fiduciary Association next month. So we're out there and we're engaging with the public, and that's where we want to be.
Thank you. Thank you very much, and have a good day.
You too.
That is FBI Special Agent Greg Concepcion. To learn more about FBI careers, or to learn about ways to engage with FBI, please check the description section of the YouTube video. This is Career Calling, and I'm your host, Pratibha Pandit. Thank you for tuning in.